I'm calling this tutorial today the anatomy of a look, because what I want to do in this tutorial is to go into the looks inside of Luminar. Now, looks are powerful. They're great tools for helping us if we're having artist block and we don't know where to go with an image. We can click on looks, and that can help us, get that block removed, and we can start moving in a more creative direction. But what I want to do today is really open up looks and take a look at them and see how different creators of those looks have added certain filters to give us a certain style and a look. And so we can learn from that. So we're going to pick these looks apart. And we're going to look at a bunch of them and just play with them. And you'll learn some tips and tricks along the way. And I think it'll really help your workflow. And it'll really help you to learn Luminar 4. Let me set the stage for how this tutorial will work. What we're going to do is we have this base image. Now, this is a stock image that I got off of unsplash.com. We're going to leave it intact. So we're going to leave it on the base layer. We're not going to make any adjustments on it. We're going to work off of layers. So make sure you're in the layer palette here and click on the plus key and add new adjustment layer. Now, every time we look at a look, we're going to add a new adjustment layer. And we'll be looking at one look at a time. And we're going to, as I said, we're going to pick them apart, see what tools they're using and filters and things like that, and we'll see how they're using them, and we're going to learn from them, and we're going to move sliders around, and we're going to have some fun. So let's get going. First off, where do you find looks in Luminar 4? Now, you're going to find them right up here in the menu bar. Looks, just click on that and your looks will come up down here. Now, see in the lower left hand corner here which says Luminar looks. Right now we're in the landscape looks, so click here. And this is a drop-down menu, and you can see all the different looks that I have here. But that's where you find them. But we're going to start out in landscape here. So, and these are the looks we have in landscape. Now, as I said, we're working on an adjustment layer here, so the base layer stays intact. So let's click on some different looks. Say we're having artist block, and we can't come up with an idea of what to do with this image. Say we've already processed this image, and it's a beautiful image right here. But we say we want to get a little creative with it, but we don't know which direction to take because we're blocked. So let's start out in landscape, and let's click on autumn colors. And there's a look right there. And we might say, well, that looks really nice, but we can keep exploring. We'll go to deep sky, dramatic landscape. That's really cool. Impressive. That is impressive. Black and white landscape, we might say, hey, we want to go in a black and white direction. See, this is giving us ideas. Morning fog, there's a foggy look. Mystic land, that's really nice. I kind of like that one. And warm sunset, that's kind of nice too. But let's pick one out here. Let's say dramatic landscape. Say we kind of like that one. Now, we have this amount slider here that we can pull this back and just add, just an amount of that effect. We may not want it on the full strength of it, but we can take it to wherever we like it here. But for now, let's leave it at full strength. But now we're going to pick this look apart. Now, if we look over here in our palettes here, whatever's highlighted, like the Essential palette and the Creative palette, that's where those looks are coming from. Okay, so let's go into the Essentials palette first and see we have AI structure being used. We have AI enhance, AI structure, and color. So let's click on AI structure. Okay, so we're not using any sky enhancer, but we're using some AI accent, and it's at 35 here. So we might say, oh, that's cool, but we might say, you know what? I want more, I want less. Okay, so let's say we want to back it off a little bit. And again, don't forget to move these sliders around. Now, let's see what the AI sky enhancer might do to it. Okay. Not bad. I'm going to leave that off. Now let's look at AI structure. What are they doing with AI structure? Well, they're adding a good bit of structure here. And we can click this little toggle right here and shut that off and turn it back on. So we can say, I like it. Now, remember, we have layer masking. So we can say, you know what? I like what it's doing to the mountains, but I don't like what it's doing to the water or the trees or the sky. And then we can just brush mask it into the mountains. We're not going to be doing that right now because we're just studying the anatomy of a look right now. Okay, so, but bear that in mind. You can do all that stuff. So let's take the structure now and say, let's just back it off a little bit because it was a little bit too strong. And remember, looks are a starting point, not a finishing point. So then there's a boost here, and we may want to take the boost and boost it up a little bit if we wanted to, but I don't like that. I don't do the boost too much, but it's there. Now let's look at color and see what they're doing with color. And again, we're learning what's in the mind of the creator of this look here. And remove color cast, not doing anything there, but they've increased the vibrance a little bit. But to get this dramatic look, we're going to learn something here. They pulled the saturation back, okay? So watch, if I double click saturation, we're almost back to kind of like the original image, but it doesn't have as dramatic of look now. But by pulling that saturation back, you see how that adds to the drama. So we're learning things along the way, right? And they pulled the saturation back, but they also bumped up the vibrance, okay? So that's a little tip there. So we can pull saturation back and we can increase vibrance for different type looks. Okay, so let's double click vibrance and see what it looks like without the vibrance turned up. And so now let's turn the vibrance up ourselves here. And see, we still maintain a lot of drama because we pulled that saturation back, but we can add a little bit more color into the image by pulling up the vibrance. So we're learning things. Now let's go into the creative section, see what they're using. They're using the dramatic filter. The preset is called dramatic landscape. So let's open that up and see what they're doing here. Okay. So they're using the amount slider at 41, local contrast at 60. Let's open up advanced settings. And they've increased brightness and saturation. Interesting. So let's see what happens if we pull the dramatic amount back. Let's take it the whole way off. So there we go. Kind of back to the base image, sort of, that look anyway. But the dramatic is adding that dramatic look. So we can see what it's doing. So we can add more or less. And remember, you can layer mask with these things as well. We can use luminosity mask and only add it to the highlights or to the darker tones. So we have all that flexibility. So bear that in mind as we go. So let's just get an adjustment. We say, okay, we kind of like that. Now let's look at the local contrast. Okay, so we might say, you know what? I like it, but I want to pull that local contrast back because it gets a little gaudy looking when you bump it up too much. So let's just take it back. Because remember, we're starting with their look and we're making it our look. Okay, now in the advanced settings, they've increased the brightness. So what happens if we increase a little bit more or decrease it? Okay, so we can come and alter it for the way we like it. And now this, the saturation is at 30. What if we pulled it back a little bit? Okay, we can do that, and that's kind of nice, and I kind of like it back a little bit. The other thing they've used is a color LUT. So let's open that up. They used a warm film LUT here. And let's go to the amount. Let's pull up the amount. We'll add more warmth or we can pull it back. So again, look at all this flexibility we have here. We might say, you know, it's too warm. Let's pull it back. We can, they decrease the contrast. We can increase the contrast if we want to. Or we can decrease it more. Maybe something like that. And then they pulled the saturation back. You notice the little theme with this creator here is they are getting a dramatic look by pulling saturations back and working and tweaking things. So what if we pulled that saturation back a little bit more? Now this saturation is basically dealing with the actual LUT itself. Now let's turn that saturation up. See, that's the saturation of the LUT. And that looks kind of nice. And you might say, you know, I don't like it on the rest of the image, but I love what's happening on these mountains. So remember, you could just mask it into the mountains if you wanted to. But let's pull that back a little bit so like maybe somewhere right around there. Now let's click on the split screen up here. And let's look at the before and after. So there's before the look and there's the after look. And that's looking really quite beautiful, I think. So that's our first look. On to the next look. All right, so we're going to come back to layers here. And let's shut off this adjustment layer 1. And now we're back to the base image. And now we can click the plus key and add new adjustment layer. Now let's look at a new look. All right, so we come back down to Luminar looks here. Click on the drop down. Now remember, we have artist block. And we're trying to find some help here. So let's go to Scott Wyden. Can't pronounce his last name, but let's click on that and let's see what Scott has for us here. Now Scott has a bunch of different looks in here. So let's say, you know what, we want to go maybe black and white. So let's click on grit on the street here. Even though this is a landscape, why can't we use grit on the street? That's just what he named it, but it could be used for anything, really. And right out of the gate, that looks really nice. Now, on a black and white look, if I pull the amount back, it'll start to let the color come through. And that might be a cool look for you, too. But I'm going to leave it up full, and I'm going to show you another thing you can do, and this is a nice little tip for you. If you come up here to the blend modes, and you like the overall tone of this image here, but you said, but I'd like to see that in color. If you come to the blend mode, normal, and come down to luminosity, you can add that toning and turn it back into a color image. So that's kind of cool. Remember that. That's a neat little trick. I use that all the time. So let's come back to the blend mode and set that back to normal. Now, let's kind of pick this look apart and see the anatomy of this look. Now, you see this little suitcase here? This is quite interesting. It says deprecated. And basically what that means, the stuff inside the suitcase came along for the trip from other Luminar versions, like maybe Luminar 1, 2, or 3 or something like that. And these filters are no longer in this particular Luminar 4 version. They're in there, but I'll tell you, you're going to find them in different locations. But to keep this is something nice that Luminar did. To keep older looks working with their newer software, they added this deprecated little suitcase here, which lets those old filters come along for the ride, which is nice. So let's see what filters they're using in here. They're using a tone filter. And they had a smart tone, which is really nice, and I wish they'd bring that back to Luminar 4. But this guy's not using it. Scott's not using it. But he increased the highlights with it, and he increased the shadows with it. He boosted up the whites, and he pulled down the blacks. So we can come and play around with these sliders. But I think that looks pretty good, so I don't want to touch that one. There was a structure filter before. It wasn't an artificial intelligence structure filter, but it was a structure filter. And he pulled the amount of the structure up. So we can pull it up even more if we want to, or pull it back. Or we can go negative with it. But let's leave it about where he had it. And then there was a softness. You could add some softness into that structure, which I kind of like that actually right there. And then you could boost the structure as well. So let me double-click boost and put it back to the detent position here of 50, or the default position. So that's what they were using. Did I show clarity yet? No. And clarity's here, but it's turned down. All right, it's turned off actually. So that's deprecated. And now let's go to essentials, because he's using some essentials here. And remember, whatever's highlighted is what he's using. And the only thing he's really using here is the black and white conversion. So here's our black and white conversion here. And he did nothing to the colors here. So we can come and play with those colors. So we can take our red tones and pull up the red tones, make them lighter, or we can make them darker. And not seeing much happening there. Let's go to the yellow tones. So we can pull up the yellow tones. See these little tips of trees on these pine trees are coming up a little bit when I pull that way up to the right. So I may want to do that, increase that. Let's play with the greens here. We can darken the greens going to the left, or lighten them going to the right. Let's play with our cyans here. Now you notice there's a lot of cyan in the water, so it gets really bright, which looks kind of not good. You might want a little bit of it, but these sliders are nice because you can really tweak up your black and white images. So maybe somewhere right around there. And then the blues, let's play with the blues. And just adjust it to where it looks good to your eye. And remember, this is your playground. You can do all of these looks any way that you like. They're just a starting point. So that's looking pretty good. So let's click on the split screen, and here's our before and here's our after. So there's another look, and it's really good. So now let's come up to layers and shut this layer off and get back to the base layer. Let me click off the split screen too. And then let's add new adjustment layer, and let's discover another new look to help us with our artist block. Writers get writer's block, artists, we get artist block. Okay, on to the next look. Now let's come to the Luminar looks and click the drop down. I'm going to show you something that may give you some trouble. Expired Tokyo. This is an older look that I have that I got free from Luminar Skylum. And it simulates like old expired film, okay? So let's click on this. It doesn't translate well into Luminar 4. Okay, it worked really great in Luminar 3, but in Luminar 4 it looks like this. Like this one, expired L2, you might be able to use that one, but look at some of these others, like expired L10 intense. Let's click on that one, and you might say, well, gosh, I can't use that. Well, that is a texture. I'll tell you that right away. And remember, whatever is highlighted here is what they're using in this look right here. So let's go over here to creative and look, texture overlay. There's that texture right there. Now, if I take the opacity and pull this back, you can start to see the image start to show through. So that might simulate like an expired film look right there. But typically, you're going to be using blend modes. So let's change this blend mode from normal to, I'll show you the ones that work really well with textures. Darken sometimes. Multiply for sure is good for textures. Color burn. Lighten, screen, and overlay, and soft light. And I think soft light looks pretty good with this one. So let's click on soft light. And because that kind of looks like an expired film right there. So that's looking nice. And then we can take the opacity and pull that back a little bit and just get it to look the way we like it. And then we can come here and adjust the brightness of it. We can darken it down, lighten it up, increase the saturation, decrease the saturation, whatever we would like. The contrast, give it more contrast, give it less contrast. Let me just pull up on the opacity again. But say like we're going for like an expired film look, and we might say, well, that's cool. So bear that in mind. Some of the older looks don't really translate well, but they'll still work. Okay, but inside of this look, we're also using something from the Pro section here. And in here, we're using split toning. And we're not using any advanced contrast, but split toning. So let's click on split toning here. And we have an amount slider here, so we can pull up the split toning. And of course, we can add toning to the highlights and to the shadows. And they're using this color in the highlights and this color in the shadows. But say we wanted to increase the color in the highlights, so we'll take the saturation and pull it up. So we can alter this look. So there's split tones. And this is not a split toning tutorial, but I'm just showing you what you can do here. And let's go to portrait. And look, they're using the Orton effect in portrait. So if you don't like that glowy look in here, look, you can just shut this off. Just toggle it off and get rid of that. Okay. Or you might like it, but you might say it's too much, so just pull it back. Or you might say, you know what, I just want to add it to the highlights. So come to luminosity mask, click on luminosity mask, and then it'll make a luminosity mask for the lights, and it'll just add it to the highlights. And then we can come back here and readjust it. But we might say, you know what, I like that right there, so I'm satisfied with that. And so now we say, let's see if we can find another look that we like. Because remember, we have artist block, and we're trying to find a direction that we can take our image to. So let's come back to layers and click the plus icon. Add new adjustment layer. Now let's take a look here. Here's the last look we just got. So if I shut this off, I'm going to shut... well, I can leave it on actually because I haven't done anything yet. But here's adjustment layer 3. Let's shut it off. And now we're back to the base image. Turn it back on. That's the last look we had. And then if we go to adjustment layer 2, click it on. There's the black and white look we had. I really like that. And let's go to adjustment layer 1. And that was the first look that we started off with, that more dramatic look. So that was the first one. Here was the second one. Here's the third one. And let's try one more, and then we'll decide which one we're going to keep and use. Okay, one last look. So let's come here to Luminar Looks, and let's find one more. And let's try Travel Mood Presets. Some cool ones in here. Deep Dark Shadows. That's kind of nice. And let's try another one. Moody Monochrome. Kind of nice. Polarized Recovery. Saturation Vibrancy, and Soft Forest Glow. Okay, say we like it, but it's a little too glowy, so let's kind of work with it. Remember, we have the amount slider, so we can pull this back too. And we might just do that. We might say, you know what, I like it right out of the gate. I'm not going to touch it. I've already showed you what we can do with these adjustments, so we can alter them. We can add to them. We can do whatever we want. But let's say we like this one right out of the gate, so let's just pull it back a little bit, and that's our last look. So now let's go back and check everything that we've done so far, and then let's vote here. And maybe in the comment section below, just say, hey, which one do you like the best, if you want to. And granted, these aren't great edits because we're just looking at looks, but if you liked a certain one above another one, let me know what you think. It'd be fun just to play around with that. And so adjustment layer 4 is this one, so let's click it. There's our base image. So there's the before and after. We can see it there. And now let's go to this look here in adjustment layer 3. And so there's that one, the expired film look. Well, I'm not going to vote for that one. And adjustment layer 2 is the black and white. I really like that. And the first one we did was this guy right here, which is a dramatic. So I'm torn between the dramatic and the black and white. So I'm going to vote on the black and white. Now, we can click the eyeball right here and see the before and then the after. So I'm voting on this one. I'm sticking with it. So I'm going to click looks here just so I don't see the looks. And there's our final result. Again, it's not a full edit, but I like it. And I could really enjoy printing this one out. So I think it looks pretty good. Well, there's the anatomy of a look. We can learn a lot by what look creators do. And we can also make our own looks and save our own looks as well. But we can learn a lot from them. And by the way, if you type the F key on your keyboard, you can go to a full screen and get rid of all the pellets and things. So you can really take a look at your image and examine it. And I think that looks pretty good. I'm really happy with this image. Like I said, I could print this one. I think it looks nice. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video today, and I hope you learned a lot. Please leave comments and questions in the comment section below. I'd really like to hear from you. If you liked the video, please like and share it with your friends. And also, if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider on doing that. And if you do, please click the bell notification icon. This way you'll be notified each time I upload a new video. Well, thanks so much for joining me today on The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly, and I'll see each and every one of you right here next time. But until then, happy editing.